She said, "I have a higher body count than you. Does that bother you?" I smiled and replied, "Not at all." Then I did something so simple it shattered her confidence. The moment she realized why I wasn't bothered. I, 32M, should have seen the red flags earlier, but love makes you blind to the obvious. My girlfriend had always been the type to push boundaries, testing limits to see how much she could get away with. That night, 3 weeks ago, she decided to test me one more time. We were sitting on my couch after dinner, scrolling through our phones when she suddenly put hers down and looked at me with that mischievous smile I'd grown to recognize. She told me she had something to confess and asked if I was ready to hear it. I nodded, thinking it would be something trivial like forgetting to mention she'd grabbed coffee with a friend. Instead, she dropped a bombshell. She told me she'd been keeping track of her body count and realized it was significantly higher than mine. She asked if that bothered me, her voice carrying that familiar tone she used when she wanted to provoke a reaction. I smiled and told her it didn't bother me at all. The truth was, it really didn't. What bothered me was the way she'd said it. Like she was trying to make me feel inadequate or jealous. Like she was weaponizing her past to hurt me in the present. She seemed surprised by my calm response and pressed further, asking if I was sure. She mentioned specific numbers, comparing them to what she assumed mine were. She wanted a reaction, wanted me to feel threatened or insecure. I maintained my smile and reassured her that her past was her past, and it had nothing to do with us. But something clicked in my mind at that moment. If she wanted to play games about the past, I could play too. I excused myself to the bathroom and pulled out my phone. I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in over a year, my ex from college. My finger hovered over the call button for a moment before I pressed it. She answered on the third ring, surprised to hear from me after so long. I explained that I was calling for an unusual favor and asked if she could help me with something. I told her I needed her to post something specific on social media, something that would show up in my girlfriend's feed since they were still connected from when we'd all hung out together. My ex was confused but curious. I explained that my current girlfriend was playing mind games, and I needed to level the playing field. I asked her to post a throwback photo of us from college with a caption about missing the good old days and how some people never forget their first real love. She laughed and said she understood exactly what I was doing. She agreed to help, saying she'd always thought my current girlfriend was a bit manipulative anyway. Within minutes, the post was live. I returned to the living room, and we continued our evening as normal. My girlfriend seemed restless, checking her phone more frequently than usual. I pretended not to notice, keeping the conversation light and acting completely unbothered by her earlier revelation. The next morning, I woke up to find her staring at her phone with a strange expression. She asked me if I'd seen what my ex had posted. I told her I hadn't been on social media and asked what she was talking about. She showed me the post, and I acted mildly surprised. I commented that it was nice to see old friends doing well and that my ex had always been sentimental. My girlfriend's expression grew darker as she asked why my ex would post something like that out of nowhere. I shrugged and suggested that maybe she was going through old photos or having a nostalgic moment. I reminded my girlfriend that people post random throwbacks all the time, but I could see the wheels turning in her head and doubt creeping in. Over the next few days, she became increasingly obsessed with the post. She asked me repeatedly about my relationship with my ex, wanting to know details about our past that she'd never cared about before. She wanted to know how serious we'd been, how long we'd dated, and why we'd broken up. I answered her questions honestly but casually, never giving her the satisfaction of seeing me get defensive or emotional. I told her about the 2 years my ex and I had been together, about how we'd talked about marriage, and how we'd only broken up because of distance when she got a job offer across the country. Each piece of information seemed to chip away at her confidence. She started comparing herself to my ex, asking if I thought she was prettier, smarter, or better in bed. I told her they were completely different people and that comparisons were pointless. But the damage was already done. Her own game had backfired spectacularly. Where she'd try to make me feel insecure about quantity, I'd accidentally made her insecure about quality. The realization that I'd had a serious, long-term relationship with someone I'd genuinely loved was eating at her. She started stalking my ex's social media obsessively, analyzing every photo and post for hidden meanings. She asked me if I still had feelings for her, if I ever thought about what might have been, and if I would get back together with her if given the chance. I remained calm and reassuring, telling her that my ex was part of my past and that I was committed to our relationship. But privately, I was fascinated by how quickly her confidence had crumbled. The same woman who tried to intimidate me with her body count was now spiraling over one social media post. A week later, she brought up the topic again, but this time with a different angle. She asked me why I wasn't bothered by her higher body count, as if my lack of jealousy was somehow suspicious. She wondered if it meant I didn't really care about her or if I was keeping my own secrets. I explained that I believed in not judging people for their past choices and that her sexual history didn't define her worth or our relationship. But she wasn't satisfied with that answer. She kept pushing, convinced there had to be more to it. That's when I decided to be completely honest with her. I told her that her body count didn't bother me because I'd learned long ago that quantity doesn't equal quality. I mentioned that my relationship with my ex had taught me that one meaningful connection was worth more than a dozen casual encounters. I watched her face change as the implications sank in. She realized that while she'd been trying to make me feel inadequate about having fewer partners, I'd been silently judging the quality of our connection. She understood that her attempt to weaponize her past had only highlighted the shallowness of what we had compared to what I'd experienced before. The conversation became heated as she accused me of playing mind games and manipulating her emotions. She said I'd deliberately set up the situation with my ex to make her feel insecure. I didn't deny it, but I pointed out that she'd started the game by trying to make me feel inadequate about my own experience. She demanded to know if I was still in love with my ex, and if that's why I wasn't bothered by her revelation. I told her honestly that I wasn't in love with my ex anymore, but that I respected what we'd had and learned from it. I explained that mature relationships were built on mutual respect and genuine connection, not on trying to make your partner feel threatened or jealous. Update 1. The argument continued for hours, with her oscillating between anger and insecurity. She accused me of being manipulative and calculating, while simultaneously admitting that she'd been trying to get a rise out of me with her original confession. The hypocrisy wasn't lost on either of us. Over the following days, she became increasingly paranoid about my past relationships. She started going through my phone when she thought I wasn't looking, checking my social media interactions, and questioning me about female friends and coworkers. The confident woman who tried to intimidate me with her sexual experience had transformed into someone consumed by jealousy and doubt. I found myself losing respect for her daily. Her inability to handle her own medicine revealed a level of immaturity and insecurity that I couldn't overlook. The woman I'd thought was confident and self-assured was actually deeply insecure and had been using her sexual past as a weapon to control and manipulate partners. 2 weeks after the initial conversation, she confronted me again, this time with tears in her eyes. She asked me to delete my ex from social media and cut all contact with her. She said seeing that post had made her realize how much our relationship meant to her and that she couldn't handle the thought of competing with my past. I refused, explaining that I wouldn't let her insecurity dictate my friendships or connections. I told her that if she couldn't trust me or handle my past, then we had bigger problems than social media posts. I reminded her that she'd started this whole situation by trying to make me jealous of her past, and now she was upset that the tables had turned. She broke down completely, admitting that she'd been testing me because she felt insecure about our relationship. She confessed that she'd always used her sexual experience to maintain power in relationships, making partners feel lucky to be with someone so desired by others. She said my complete lack of jealousy had thrown her off balance and made her question everything. I realized in that moment that our entire relationship had been built on her need to feel superior and my willingness to be accommodating. She'd never actually respected me. She just enjoyed having someone who didn't challenge her or make her feel threatened. My calm response to her game had shattered the dynamic she'd worked so hard to maintain. Update 2. The revelation changed everything between us. Once I understood that she'd been systematically trying to undermine my confidence throughout our relationship, I couldn't unsee it. I started noticing all the small ways she'd been keeping me off balance. The casual mentions of men who'd hit on her, the comparisons to her exes, the subtle implications that I was lucky to have her. I began pulling back emotionally, no longer playing along with her games or seeking her validation. This shift in my behavior only made her more desperate and clingy. She started love-bombing me, suddenly becoming the perfect girlfriend she'd never been before. She cooked my favorite meals, planned romantic dates, and showered me with affection. But it was too late. I'd seen behind the mask, and I couldn't go back to being the naive partner who'd accepted her manipulation as normal relationship behavior. Every gesture felt calculated. Every kind word felt like a strategy to regain control. She sensed my withdrawal and became increasingly erratic. She oscillated between trying to seduce me back into compliance and having emotional breakdowns about her insecurities. She started therapy, claiming she wanted to work on herself for our relationship, but I could tell it was just another manipulation tactic. During one of our increasingly frequent arguments, she accused me of punishing her for being honest about her past. She said I was being cruel and vindictive by withdrawing my affection just because she'd told me something personal. I corrected her, explaining that I wasn't punishing her for her past. I was responding to her present behavior and the way she'd tried to weaponize that past against me. I told her that if she'd simply shared her sexual history as part of getting to know each other better, I would have accepted it without judgment. But she deliberately framed it as a challenge, trying to make me feel inadequate and insecure. The problem wasn't her body count. It was her character and the way she treated people she claimed to love. She tried to argue that she'd just been testing our relationship to see how strong it was, but I pointed out that healthy relationships don't require tests or games. Trust is built through consistency and respect, not through deliberate attempts to provoke jealousy or insecurity. Update 3. 3 weeks after our initial conversation, I made the decision to end the relationship. I realized that I could never fully trust someone who'd admitted to deliberately trying to manipulate my emotions as a test. More importantly, I'd lost all attraction to someone who'd revealed themselves to be fundamentally insecure and manipulative. When I told her I was breaking up with her, she went through every stage of grief in rapid succession. First, she denied that our problems were serious, insisting we could work through them. Then she got angry, accusing me of being unforgiving and holding grudges. She tried bargaining, promising to change and never play games again. When those tactics failed, she fell into a depression, claiming I was abandoning her when she needed me most. She said she'd been vulnerable with me and that I was punishing her for opening up. I remained firm in my decision, explaining that vulnerability requires honesty and respect, neither of which she'd shown me. Finally, she reached acceptance, but even that came with a twist. She told me she understood why I was leaving and that she'd learned a valuable lesson about relationships. But then she added that she hoped I'd learned something too, that not all women would be as patient with my emotional unavailability as she'd been. Even in defeat, she couldn't resist one last attempt to undermine my confidence. But her words had no power over me anymore. I'd seen through her manipulation and understood that her version of patience was actually control disguised as tolerance. The aftermath was revealing. Within days of our breakup, she was posting provocative photos on social media and making subtle references to being single and available. She started flirting openly with mutual acquaintances and made sure word got back to me about her active dating life. Her behavior only confirmed that I'd made the right decision. Someone who truly cared about our relationship wouldn't immediately try to make their ex-partner jealous or regretful. Her actions revealed that she'd never actually loved me. She'd just enjoyed having control over me. I felt a profound sense of relief and clarity. For months, I'd been walking on eggshells, trying to maintain peace and avoid triggering her insecurities. I'd been so focused on being understanding and supportive that I'd lost sight of my own needs and boundaries. My ex from college reached out a few days later, having heard through mutual friends about my breakup. She asked if I was okay and mentioned that she'd noticed my girlfriend's behavior on social media. We had a brief but meaningful conversation about toxic relationships and the importance of recognizing manipulation tactics. She apologized for her role in creating drama between my girlfriend and me, but I assured her that she'd actually done me a favor. Without that social media post, I might never have seen my girlfriend's true nature so clearly. Sometimes it takes a small catalyst to reveal massive underlying problems. Looking back, I realized that my calm response to her body count revelation had been the beginning of the end. She'd expected me to react with jealousy or insecurity, and when I didn't, her entire manipulation strategy fell apart. My confidence had shattered hers, not because I'd intended to hurt her, but because genuine confidence always exposes fake confidence. The experience taught me valuable lessons about recognizing manipulation in relationships. I learned to trust my instincts when something feels off, even if I can't immediately identify what's wrong. I also learned that truly secure people don't need to make their partners feel insecure to maintain control. Most importantly, I learned that the right person won't test your love or try to make you jealous. They'll build you up instead of tearing you down, and they'll share their vulnerabilities as gifts of trust, not as weapons of manipulation. My ex-girlfriend's games had ultimately freed me to find someone who would love me without conditions or competitions. The simple act of not reacting to her provocation had revealed everything I needed to know about our relationship. Sometimes the most powerful response to manipulation is no response at all. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us. Please subscribe.